Welcome back to Torah on the Go. Whether you are walking your dog or working out or taking a break from work, we are glad that you are spending time with us learning Torah. I'm sitting here with my podcast partner, Rabbi Feinstein.
Good morning.
And we are talking about the book of Leviticus. This is season 3, episode 3, and we are one episode away from actually learning the first verse of the book. This is going to be the last conceptual conversation before we delve into the text. And I'm going to bring in here a scholar from the 20th century, all long ago, 65 years ago. She wrote a bunch of very influential books about religion. Her name was Mary Douglas. I have one of them in my office right here, Purity and Danger, that really affected the academic study of religion. Her last work was called Leviticus as Literature. So she begins talking about the purity and danger of religion in general, and she looks at a bunch of different ideas from different religions. She ends talking about Leviticus, focusing finally on the foundational ideas of religion itself. And here she makes an interesting claim, and the claim is actually brought out by our friend Gary Rendberg, professor of Bible. He wrote an article on thetorah.com, which is a resource that I always like to read. Thetorah.com was a website started by our friend Mark Brettler. And in his article, he talks about Mary Douglas's claim that basically Leviticus is an example of literature where form follows function, where she claims that Leviticus walks you through the tabernacle itself by the first 17 chapters being this kind of outer court of ritual instruction. The chapters 18 to 24, the next 6 chapters, being a holy place, the inner courtyard, and then the last 3 chapters being the Holy of Holies. And her claim is not only that you move through from a place of courtyard to a place of Holy of Holies, but each place becomes smaller, right? And so the amount of chapters end up becoming less and become more significant. So the less words we are allotted to it, the more significant it is in the book of Leviticus, because ultimately we're trying to search for the oneness, and we have the least amount of words to describe the divine. What say you?
It's a marvelous thesis. Whether it's true, it's just such a suggestive way to read the book.
Right.
Of course, what it does is it goes back to what we talked about last week, which was what she's saying is that the ethical aspects of this book are a whole lot more important than the ritual aspects. The ritual aspects are sort of perfunctory compared to the deep ethics of the last chapters, the social ethics and the personal ethics of the last chapters of the book. And, which is something that most modern readers would resonate to. I'm not sure that an ancient reader would resonate to that.
Correct. I think you have to go through all of art history, and you have to understand all of the academia and scholarship of religion, put it all together like she did in this in her final work.
And it's beautiful. It's right. Beautiful. But remember something, that, for example, the Mishnah, the Mishnah, which is the core of the Talmud code of Jewish tradition and law, which was written down 150 years after the destruction of the temple. A great deal of the Mishnah deals with stuff that was involved in the temple.
Right.
They didn't lose that stuff. They kept it. So I'm not sure they would agree with her notion that the first chapter having to do with sacrifice and ritual stuff is not as important, not as holy, not as important as the later stuff. You'd have a debate there. Still, I think it's a pretty nice, a wonderful thesis.
Well, let me take her thesis and transpose it on the Jewish year.
Please.
Okay, and I would say to myself, if the most Leviticus-based day of our year is Yom Kippur, right? We both agree, sure. Yom Kippur. We read Leviticus, we read passages from Leviticus. It's a day where we're constantly tracking sacrifices, if you understand how the liturgy is shaped and whatnot.
Right, we even reenact the sacrifice in the Avodah service.
That's exactly right. That ends up being a day we can only live out once. So out of the 365, we live it out once. And then you say, if that's the Holy of Holies of all of our tradition of the calendar year, then I would say that the holy place, if we're walking backwards from the Holy of Holies, would probably be, let's call it Shabbos.
Yeah.
Okay, so we end up with, 4 times 12, let's say 48, just to make it simple math. I know I'm going to get an email from somebody to say it's actually 52 or 53, whatever it is. But let's say we end up roughly with 50 Shabbases a year. Mm-hmm. And then we end up with kind of all the other days. I mean, there are holidays also. So let's say instead of 50, let's say there's 65 holy days during the year.
Yeah.
And then there are the rest of the days. Leviticus kind of follows that form as well. I mean, if we think about it, that we're constantly trying to narrow down and focus our intention to the most spiritual, the most meaningful, which I think is ultimately her claim, that's what Leviticus forces us to do. We can use that in any number of aspects of our life.
But you could flip it. I mean, think about the other side. What you could do exactly the opposite, which is to say, the Holy of Holies is the communion with God. That's what the first chapters are about. We read them in all of the gore and muck of sacrifices, but the idea of standing in the presence of God, that's remarkable. In order to be pure enough to stand in the presence of God, you have to be a pure person from a pure society. And so it might go the other way.
Right.
I mean, you might read the book backwards. In other words, start at the end. That's how you get pure enough in order to arrive at the beginning where you're permitted to stand in the presence of the Lord.
Right.
Right.
I mean, we start Yom Kippur by saying B'Yeshiva Shalmala, B'Yeshiva Shalmala.
Right.
In the divine court, in the heavenly court, in the earthly court, we hope that we can be accepted in this grouping that we're standing in right now.
Right.
And in that way, you could read it backwards.
And you have to start with Kol Nidre.
That's right.
The wonderful thing about Kol Nidre is that it should come at the end of the holiday.
That's right.
After a whole day of repenting, then you're told, okay, you're off the hook. But we start that way. You're off the hook. Now you can commune with God.
And that goes to the idea, Kol Nidre, all the rabbis agree, should come at the end or perhaps not at all during the year.
Yeah.
But it comes at the beginning because, as it turns out, even in antiquity, at the end of Yom Kippur, at the end of fasting for 25 hours, Jews rushed out of synagogue, right? They weren't willing to stand there and then disavow pledges that they couldn't be good. So there is a certain relationship between sanctity and food practices that's been with us for thousands of years.
We're back to this.
We're back to this. I mean, so Leviticus, it's not surprising to me that, the way that we get close to God is by presenting some kind of offering that turns into a meal.
Yeah. So I'll present you a different way of thinking about this. So Yitz Greenberg, Rabbi Irving Greenberg, who is one of my dear, dear teachers, and I'm very lucky to have spent time with him, just came out with his magnum opus, his book, The Triumph of Life. And he makes a wonderful claim there. He says, Judaism's goal is to perfect the world.
Right.
But the program of perfecting the world works in terms of microcosms, small miniatures. So he says, you have the entire humanity. The microcosm for the entire humanity is the Jewish people. The microcosm for the whole world is Israel. The microcosm for Israel is Jerusalem. And the microcosm for Jerusalem is the temple. The microcosm for all of time is Shabbat. And so what we are told as Jews is, look, you're going to perfect the world, but you're going to start small. So first by starting to perfect yourself, perfect this one day a week, perfect this one sector, make one sector of the world perfect, clean, cleared of sin and arrogance and all of the other things, the moral kinds of problems that enter in there, right? And then make this people a people of justice. So he talks about these microcosms. So to think about, in Mary Douglas's terms, the temple itself is the microcosm of the world. And our job is to make it right, to make it perfect. Right? And you think about how we do that in personal life, right? Begin with my own family. I want to make the world perfect. Okay, fine. Start with your family. See if you can get your family to work it out. It's very, very hard to make the world perfect if you can't come home to a home that's peaceful and loving. So there's a whole idea of shalom bayit, of creating peace in your home before you try to go out and make peace out into the world, or as you're making peace out in the world. I like this idea of microcosms, working in the miniature.
It's beautiful. I don't know that Mary Douglas and Yitz Greenberg have ever been brought into conversation like this. It's amazing.
It's the first time.
It's the first. It's beautiful.
It's the first time.
I think that makes the world more accessible. I mean, what we're talking about essentially is how do you take these grand ideas, whether it be the Holy of Holies, or whether it be perfecting the world, or whatever idea you want to take that is, truly abstract and grand,
Right.
and make it accessible to an average person. And don't you think that's ultimately the endeavor of religion?
Yes, that's exactly right. That is nicely said. And in particular, if you look at this, how we did this, right? So in the year 70, the temple is destroyed, and the rabbis of the tradition had decided to leave the city and establish a school and begin to refigure what would our religion look like without a temple, without Leviticus. We'll keep the book, but we don't do this stuff anymore. We don't do sacrifices. And what they did was quite brilliant. They took the accoutrements of that temple and they brought them into everybody's life. So your table is your altar, and you become the high priest. And the meal you share with your family is your sacrificial meal, your holy meal. The challah on the table, the word challah, by the way, doesn't mean egg bread. It's actually a name of a sacrifice. Right. You put salt on it because every sacrifice was offered with salt. Your home becomes a holy of holies. Your community becomes a sector of holiness. In other words, what the rabbis did was they basically said, we don't see the destruction of the temple as the ultimate tragedy. Ironically, we see it as a way of liberating holiness into our lives, liberating holiness from that building and those professionals into the whole people, the whole community, and all the sectors of the world that we can embrace.
That's right. And I agreed. And I think one of the beautiful parts about the way that Judaism has conserved the entire Torah is that it never crosses the rabbis' minds in the year 70 to remove the book of Vayikra.
Yes.
And I don't know that Jews really appreciate that enough, is that not only are we a people that always maintain minority opinions in the Talmud, but we never erased part of our traditions, even in moments when we pivoted from it. So we knew in the year 70, when the temple was destroyed, we would no longer be enacting sacrifices in the temple like that again. Until, or maybe one day there will be, but right now, for sure, no. But it would never dawned on the rabbis to say, well, then let's remove the book from the Torah.
Yeah.
What do we need it for?
Why do you think that is?
Oh, I think because we have incredible reverence for our tradition.
Yeah.
I think that's why our services are too long.
Yes, that's true.
Because we keep every single we want to honor every aspect of our tradition.
Yeah, we can't throw anything out.
That's right. That's right. We're like the hoarders of religion, the Jewish people, and so we keep all of it. And by the way, I think that when society, the best of society, acknowledges where it came from in the best sense and the worst sense. So I think that it's amazing that as Americans we don't offer appreciation about this either, because it's a weird thing to talk about. But when my kids study the Constitution, there are parts of the when it talks about 3/5 of a human being, that's a terrible aspect to maintain. Why didn't we just why don't we just edit that out altogether?
Yeah.
I think it's important to understand that was the way that it was written. The amendment comes later to correct it. It's important to understand how we progress as people. And I think that's in keeping with societies that really understand themselves, understand their history, and don't rewrite or erase history.
That's a lovely way to put it. And I think because we said this earlier, the radical nature of this book is that the God of the universe says to each member of this Jewish community, come close.
Right.
I want to be with you. Come close. Here's how you do it. There's a technique, but I want you to come. The intention, the kavanah, is to come close. And I love what the rabbis did. What the rabbis did was said, you know what? Coming close doesn't mean spatially coming close, because we don't have that space anymore. Thank God we do now. Right. But once upon a time, we didn't have that space. But it's a turning of the heart. There, I think Mary Douglas is exactly right. It's a turning of the heart, and wherever you are can become your holy of holies.
That's right.
Wherever you are. I always love, every time we go to Israel, we go to the Kotel. Kotel is this powerful, the Western Wall. Kotel is this powerful place. But I remember davening one Friday night at the Kotel with some friends, and I turned around, and at the back of the Kotel, there's a yeshiva. It's called Porat Yosef. Beautiful, beautiful yeshiva. and there's a bunch of yeshiva guys, and they're davening in the beis medrash of the yeshiva. I was saying to myself, you guys are 100 yards away from the Kotel.
Right.
Come on down. No, because for them, the Holy of Holies is in the circle of their prayers.
Right.
You don't need the wall, and that's such an interesting way of thinking about it.
That's right. That's right. And we experience it every time, by the way. Every time a VBS group goes,
Yeah.
with great sense of intentionality, I bring them to the egalitarian space of the Kotel.
Right.
So we can all sit together.
Right.
And we have this, I present to them this moving talk about this is what we've fought for as conservative, Masorti Jews for this space and blah, blah, blah. And then when the talk is over and we've davened and hug each other, they all say to each other, why don't we go take pictures at the real Kotel? Yeah. and they walk off to the other. So it's this set of rocks, that set of rocks. We're all, there's something kind of authentic about a space that people intuit.
Yeah.
And they say, that's the space or this is the space. And when you walk into a community, you understand where the holy space has been created in that community.
Right.
I think that it's people who are in our sanctuary. Our sanctuary is incredibly beautiful and special. And one of the great joys of each month is walking into the gymnasium and seeing Tat Shabbat.
Yes, yes.
Because there's a chaos and a madness that goes on there in front of our gym arc, which is built into the. It's as if it's at Staples Centers or Crypto Arena that just on the side of the basketball court they put an arc. And to see that kind of joy in the eyes of children is such a special experience. Yeah. So as a community, you understand where and why special spaces are created.
That's beautiful.
And here in Leviticus, this is our first special space.
Yeah. So the book is called Leviticus because it was called in Hebrew Torah Kohanim, the Levites or the Kohen, the priestly Torah. And so in was it Latin or Greek? It's Leviticus. I always thought it rhymed with Spartacus. So it's not. But in Hebrew, the first
to honor
word
Kirk
of the
Douglas.
Book, yeah,
you thought that's what it was to honor Kirk Douglas.
Yeah, not Mary Douglas.
Not Mary Douglas. Kirk Douglas. Exactly.
Right. In Hebrew, the book is Vayikra, which means God called us.
Right.
And I think that's it. That's why we kept the book, because this idea that God says, "Come close, come here, come close, come close." And if you've ever had that experience that somebody that you dearly revere, a great teacher, grandfather, a hero of yours says, "Come here, I want to get to know you. Come close." That's what this book. That's why the book is so precious, because God says, "Okay, come here. I want to talk to you. I want to hear what's in your heart, and I want to tell you what I want you to hear." And that's what this book is about. That's what makes it so special. And as you said, it's so lovely. You can feel that at the Kotel. You can feel that at the place next to the Kotel.
Right.
You can feel it in the sanctuary. You can feel it in Tat Shabbat.
Right.
That's the sensitivity that the book is trying to create.
Well, we look forward to learning with you again next week and actually talking about this word that Rabbi Feinstein just said, Vayikra. The name of the book itself comes from the first line of the book, of course. It's a special word, and it's noticeable in the Torah. We'll talk about it next week. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, and we look forward to learning with you next time.
Take care.